first picture we made was a film called In the Line of Duty, the FBI Murders. And it was very successful here in the United States. So I spoke to the network and I suggested, they talked about perhaps doing some kind of weekly series about the characters in that particular movie. And I thought it might be a better idea to do 2-hour films, all of them being very different, but all with the same idea that these are stories about law enforcement officials in the United States who have tragically died. Now, unfortunately, quite a few law enforcement people die in the course of any year. However, not that many of them have interesting stories attached to it. But we went back to all sorts of files by various law enforcement agencies across the country, and we've come up with a number of very, very interesting stories. They're usually pretty interesting heroes and also very interesting villains. These are all true stories, and they've all been contemporary stories. What we've tried to do in all of these films is dramatize the confirmed facts of the case and not necessarily take a point of view, especially a political point of view. And those confirmed facts, I think, had a certain ambiguity to them. Obviously, the Call character, his reasons for being came out of a situation that everyone could relate to on the farmlands, but his was a pathological turn of those things.
It came about when I was speaking to one of the executives at HBO, as a matter of fact, at a baseball game we'd gone to together, and he told me about this project and asked me if I had anything I would like to do that I could write and then direct for them along those lines. So, a story about women and men, a short story. And I thought for a bit and came up with this story I remembered. It was really a sketch by Irwin Shaw that I'd read many years before, and sent them the story, and they liked it, and commissioned a script, and it went from there. Very often you have the material of a 30-minute piece expanded, and you're presented, you have to sit with it for 2 hours. And the nice thing about these things is that they say what they have to say in that 30-minute time, and if it's done right, you feel the same way you feel as you read a good short story. He had to come in early, and we did a lot of training. Had to change him from a left-hander to a right-hander, and he knew a bit about boxing. I mean, he could throw a punch, and but he did work at it. He worked at it quite hard.
The stories are slices of life. They're not stories which have a traditional beginning, middle, and end. They are basically snapshots of a relationship at a given moment. There are no tidy resolutions. There are no neat, happy endings. And so they require a bit more work from the audience because they don't adhere to the standard storytelling rules that Hollywood has so traditionally stuck to. There's a literacy to them. There's an intelligence to them. There's a reliance on dialogue, which I think is their real strength, and that is unusual on American television. It's actually unusual in American cinema as well. It's quite interesting if you compare an American film script against a European film script. It's a lot shorter because there's much less dialogue.
Playhouse is the best place for a filmmaker to work in the United States that I can think of. They trust their filmmakers. They are willing to take risks on particular kinds of subject matter and material. It's great. I had been working as an assistant director on films like Blood Simple and Raising Arizona. I came out of film school and was trying to get my directing career going. And what's great about Playhouse is that they operate very much like a studio in the sense that they finance development of projects and so on. But someone like me who didn't have a lot of directing credits could come in off the street.
The idea actually came from the producers of American Playhouse. They saw a short piece of mine in the theater. There was a review called Urban Blight, in which about 30 playwrights contributed very short sketches with various, their assessment of what's going on with our crazy city. And my piece was Andre's Mother, but a very, very short version of it, about a 5-minute version of it. When this was broadcast, Andre's Mother, in the States, I got several letters from mothers, and very often they'd be signed, George's mother, William's mother. They didn't sign their real names, but just identify themselves as a mother of a gay man, usually, who had died of AIDS, and they had been able to really acknowledge that while they were alive. That's very powerful to open mail like that, I don't have to tell you. And it made me think a little differently about how many people a writer really wants to reach, and the limitations of theater, actually. Richard Thomas was on a television series in America as a very young man. He must have been, in his very, very early 20s, maybe late teens, when he began it, called The Waltons. And he stayed on that show for, 7 or 8 years, and the character he played was called John Boy. And even now, when you're with Richard on the street or a restaurant, people will come up and say, John Boy. He's so identified with that character. He played a young man growing up in an impoverished community, poor people in the mountains. He was anguished and had troubled relationships with his parents, but he was at heart a very good person. And he became kind of America's surrogate son.
I guess it was okay for someone who has the image that I've got throughout America for being sort of the big brother next door. In a way, maybe it was good. People have a sort of a familial feeling about me, and they like me or trust me, and perhaps I could take them on this journey a little more willingly. In our business in particular, AIDS has been a ravaging influence, and each of us in the arts has lost a number of people to this disease. Everybody out here is just doing what they can, and you never feel like you're doing enough, or there's always something more that needs to be done and needs to be said.
It was very documentary, and I used to say to him, remember the V word, verisimilitude, that he had to, every moment of the film had to be precise and truthful, because the whole tension of the piece was how believable it could be. Cable television in America gives you tremendous license to do sort of daring material. You don't have to worry about censorship, you don't have to worry about getting a rating. And of course, it's infinitely preferable than working in network television if you're doing kind of dangerous material, because, then it's very, very limited, the choice of subject matter, the choice of language. So I think cable television, in many ways, is ideal for this sort of film.
Criminal Justice is the sort of film that just wouldn't be made anywhere else in America. It wouldn't be made for network television. It wouldn't be made for the cinema. It doesn't adhere to the normal rules of storytelling. It's a piece that really tries to explore what has happened to the justice system in America today, in a time when it's completely overloaded and justice is negotiated in the corridors of the courtroom, not actually decided within the courtroom.
Colin and the people he works with, they told me, make as tough a film as you can make. If you have to show the violence, really show it. If you have to use the language, use it. Make this as tough and as hard-hitting as you can. Whereas on network television, when you deal normally with the networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, they say the opposite to you. What inspired it was I was a juror in a murder case in Manhattan where a black guy was accused of murdering a crack dealer, and he also was a crack dealer. And and I was a juror on the case, and we were sequestered, and it was an extraordinary experience being on a murder jury and going back and forth between thinking he's guilty, he's innocent, who's telling the truth, who's lying. And consequently, I decided I wanted to do a movie that I would write and direct, which would put the audience in a similar position to being a juror, even more than winning the award. And it's great to win awards, and I've won a number of them with this film. But the thing that was really a thrill for me was to come to France and to see the film shown with French subtitles and, in the Grand Palais at Cannes, and to see it to see it filled with an audience of people who weren't American, who didn't know, don't really know where Brooklyn is or what the Brooklyn Arraignments Court is like, and to see an international audience respond to the movie.